Part 1 began on an ordinary morning that quietly refused to stay ordinary. Emma Carter woke before the alarm, the house still and dim, rain tapping softly against the windows of her Oregon home, as if reminding her that time never truly stops. She moved through the kitchen on habit alone, making coffee, staring at the sink, feeling the familiar weight of loneliness settle in her chest. 3 years had passed since her husband died, yet grief still lived in small corners of the house, in the empty chair, the quiet mornings, the unanswered questions about who she was now. That morning, without knowing why, Emma paused before getting dressed. Instead of her usual loose sweater, she chose a soft blue dress she had not worn in years. It was simple, modest, but it made her feel visible again. She brushed her hair carefully, looked at herself in the mirror, and for a brief moment didn't turn away. It wasn't about impressing anyone, it was about remembering herself. When her teenage son Noah walked into the kitchen, backpack half-zipped, eyes still tired from sleep, he stopped. He didn't smile right away. He didn't joke. He just looked at her, really looked at her, as if noticing something he hadn't seen before. The silence stretched, and Emma felt suddenly unsure, exposed in a way she hadn't expected. Then Noah spoke, his voice calm but uncertain, telling her she looked nice. The words were simple, but the way he said them carried weight. Emma smiled back, steady on the outside, shaken on the inside. She realized that her son had crossed an invisible line that morning, not in a wrong way, but in a human one. He saw her not only as his mother, but as a person who carried sadness, strength, and quiet beauty. As Noah left for school, Emma stood alone in the kitchen, heart beating faster than it should have, wondering why a single look had unsettled her so deeply. Throughout the day, that moment followed her. At work, she missed emails, stared out windows, and replayed Noah's expression in her mind. It wasn't judgment. It wasn't confusion. It was awareness. She remembered how life once felt full, how love once came easily, and how she had closed herself off without realizing it. That night, standing alone again in the kitchen, she understood that something had changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough to matter. That look from her son had quietly asked a question she had been avoiding for years, whether she was still allowed to live fully, to feel deeply, to be more than what loss had left behind. And Emma knew, without yet knowing how, that this was only the beginning of a shift that would touch every part of their lives. Part 2 unfolded over the next few days, as small moments began to crack open parts of Emma's life she had sealed shut. The look Noah gave her that morning stayed in her thoughts as she moved through her routine, and instead of pushing it away, she let herself feel it. One evening, while cleaning the garage to make space for winter, Emma found an old cardboard box hidden behind paint cans. Inside were photo albums, letters, and small items she thought she had already let go of. She sat on the floor, dust on her hands, flipping through pages filled with smiles, vacations, birthdays, and a version of herself that felt distant yet familiar. Noah wandered in and sat beside her without speaking, quietly studying the photos, as if learning history from a book he had never fully read. When he mentioned how happy she looked with his father, Emma answered honestly, telling him that love does not disappear when someone is gone, but it changes shape. Noah listened closely, not as a child seeking comfort, but as someone trying to understand life. That night, Emma realized her son was no longer just growing older, he was growing deeper. A few days later, she attended a school fundraiser she had planned to skip, forcing herself to go at the last minute. That was where she met Daniel Brooks, a widowed history teacher with calm eyes and a soft voice. Their conversation began with polite words about school and weather but slowly shifted into shared experiences of loss, parenting, and quiet survival. There was no rush, no pressure, just an unexpected ease that surprised Emma. She laughed without forcing it, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel guilty for enjoying the moment. Noah noticed the change when she came home lighter than usual, her steps less heavy. He didn't ask questions, but his attention sharpened. Over the next week, Daniel and Emma crossed paths again, exchanging short talks that lingered longer than planned. Emma felt something warm stirring inside her, something she had convinced herself no longer belonged to her life. At the same time, doubt followed closely behind. She worried about betraying memories, about confusing her son, about wanting something she believed she had lost the right to want. One evening, Noah mentioned Daniel casually at dinner, observing that he seemed kind. Emma paused, surprised by how carefully Noah spoke, as if measuring his words. She realized he was watching not with suspicion, but with concern for her happiness. That night, alone in her room, Emma admitted a truth she had avoided: she was lonely, and loneliness had quietly shaped her choices for years. She understood now that grief had protected her, but it had also trapped her. Part 2 ended not with a decision, but with awareness, the kind that doesn't allow a person to go back to who they were before. Emma stood at the edge of change, knowing that something meaningful was waiting ahead, even if she wasn't ready to reach for it yet. Part 3 moved quickly, driven by moments Emma could no longer ignore. Daniel began calling more often, never pushing, never demanding, just checking in, asking about her day, sharing small stories about his students or his quiet evenings. Emma told herself it was harmless, yet every call made her feel more awake. They met for coffee, then for short walks in the park, always keeping space, always respectful, but the connection between them grew steady and clear. Emma felt both comforted and afraid. She laughed more easily, slept less restlessly, and caught herself looking forward to moments she once believed were closed chapters. At the same time, guilt pressed against her heart. She wondered if moving forward meant leaving her past behind, if loving again meant losing something sacred. One evening, she returned home later than usual and found Noah sitting on the porch steps, waiting. He didn't accuse her or question her. He simply looked at her with the same calm awareness that had unsettled her days earlier. Emma sat beside him, unsure what to say, but Noah spoke first, telling her she didn't need to explain everything, only to be honest with herself. His words were careful but strong. He said he noticed how quiet she became when she thought no one was watching, how she carried sadness like a weight she refused to set down. He told her he didn't want her to fade away out of fear. Emma felt tears rise, not from pain, but from relief. She realized Noah had been watching her struggle in silence, learning about love and loss through her choices. That night, Emma admitted out loud that she was afraid to want something again, afraid of being hurt, afraid of hurting him. Noah answered simply, saying that loving someone new didn't erase the love that came before. His voice held no anger, only understanding. That moment changed how Emma saw her son. He was no longer just the boy she protected, but someone who understood the cost of living with a closed heart. In the days that followed, Emma allowed herself to be more open with Daniel. Their conversations deepened, touching on dreams they thought had ended and hopes they were scared to name. Still, Emma held back, standing between what she felt and what she feared. She knew a choice was coming, one that would require courage she wasn't sure she had yet. Part 3 ended with Emma standing in her quiet living room one night, phone in her hand, Daniel's message glowing on the screen, Noah's words echoing in her mind, and the clear understanding that love was asking her not for perfection, but for honesty. Part 4 arrived quietly, but carried the weight of everything that came before it. Emma read Daniel's message again, then once more, before finally answering with a simple invitation to dinner, her hands shaking as she typed. The days leading up to it passed fast, filled with nervous energy and careful thought. She cleaned the house more than needed, not to impress, but to feel ready, as if order in her space might bring order to her heart. On the evening Daniel arrived, Noah helped without being asked, setting the table and straightening chairs with a calm focus that surprised Emma. There was no awkwardness, no tension, only a quiet understanding shared between mother and son. When Daniel stepped inside, the house felt warmer, not because of his presence alone, but because Emma allowed it to be. Dinner unfolded easily, with gentle laughter, simple stories, and long pauses that felt comfortable rather than empty. Daniel spoke with respect, never crossing boundaries, never rushing moments, and Emma felt seen without feeling pressured. Noah joined the conversation naturally, his maturity clear in the way he listened and responded. Emma watched them both, realizing that love did not divide, it expanded. After Daniel left, thanking her with a soft smile that carried hope instead of expectation, Emma stood in the doorway for a long moment, breathing deeply, aware that something meaningful had begun. Inside, Noah waited in the living room, pretending to scroll on his phone, but clearly aware of her presence. When she sat beside him, he looked at her and smiled, telling her he was proud. The words settled deep inside her, healing places she didn't know were still wounded. That night, Emma stood alone before the mirror, not searching for youth or answers, but acknowledging the woman she had become through loss, resilience, and quiet courage. She understood then that her son's look weeks ago had not been a moment of distance, but of connection, a sign that he trusted her strength enough to let her live fully again. In the days that followed, Emma moved forward with care, but without hiding. She allowed happiness to exist alongside memory, joy alongside grief. She learned that being a mother did not mean giving up being human, and honoring the past did not require rejecting the future. The change was not dramatic from the outside, but inside, everything felt different. Emma no longer walked through life as someone waiting for it to end, but as someone willing to feel it again. And every time Noah looked at her now, there was peace in his eyes, knowing that the woman who raised him had finally chosen to keep living, not just for him, but for herself.